Very welcome to Rediscovering Childhood podcast. I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest, Dr. Gillian Lake, Chief Education Officer with Child Paths, Ireland's leading early childhood education software, and a mum of two. Gillian brings a rare blend of real-life classroom experience, deep academic expertise, and genuine passion for childhood. She has spent years teaching, researching, and advocating for early childhood education, and now leads the education vision behind Child Paths, helping educators and families collaborate more meaningfully on children's development. With a background that spans primary teaching, a master's and a PhD in child development and education from Oxford, and hands-on work designing interventions that truly support children's growth, Gillian understands both the theory and the lived reality of what children need. What I admire the most about Gillian is her belief in the power of relationships, secure attachments, tender moments, and supporting each child as the unique human they are. She works tirelessly to elevate and honour the work of early childhood educators and to make the new Aistear framework something that feels accessible rather than intimidating for both parents and teachers. So hello Gillian, if you had a magic wand and could change one thing, just one thing in the whole early childhood education in Ireland, what would that be?
Okay, well, I'd like to change lots of things. But
we need a big magic wand.
If I had to choose one thing, and we were talking about this earlier, I think it's the perception of early childhood that's still out there. In fact, I was just reading something yesterday, an OECD report, the Starting Strong report. And in Ireland now, there is a bit of a non-response bias there from the educators in Ireland. But there is data there to say that parents and guardians have a reasonable understanding of what early childhood is now. But when you move to what society in Ireland thinks of early childhood, it's a much more grim story. And I really would like to change the viewpoint and how it's perceived, because that then has a knock-on effect on all the other things in early childhood, how it's governed, the paying conditions for the staff, and then how the professionals actually see themselves, and they're all interlinked. So I think it starts with perception, and I would love to change that it's, it's not babysitting, it's not, it's not pure childcare. There is very high stuff going on in terms of and it's early childhood education, and care. And unfortunately, recently, actually, there has been a move from a policy side to actually call it something different. They're calling it early learning and care. And that takes away, I think, a little bit of the role for the educator, because it's not education. The educators look at themselves and what's
that's
my
a step backwards.
Yeah, what's my role in this if it's just early learning? I can see that maybe they wanted it if I'm being really kind, maybe they wanted it to be more child focused, but actually what they've done is taken away some of the
power of the education.
Yeah, by taking out the word education.
Yeah, and words hold so much power. So it's really it's even when I say kids playing, and the first thing that comes to mind, it's always kids making a mess, or sand castles, or football, or playground, and it takes away the value of play. So when I do the training for teachers, I say meaningful experience, meaningful learning, meaningful teaching. But I think we need a brand new word that includes education, learning, play, all of these together. We need to create a brand new word that takes all that and it's a new conception of what is it that what does that really mean, learning through play?
Yeah, and unfortunately I don't think at the moment, certainly politically, I don't think there's political will for the examination of that conceptually. I think it kind of suits the agenda at the moment to just leave things the way they are and keep the status quo. So, because if they allow the status quo to rise anymore, people will step outside and say, well, actually, hang on a second, we're doing so much more. Yeah. Like we have such a bearing on how this society is going to function in the future, actually, with the people that we have, the small people that we have in our care. And the job we do is vital to, a functioning society, functioning economy, if you want to go down that road, although I don't like using that, but also functioning human beings in the future, who can actually be part of a society and the culture of that we live in. Yeah.
So if I'm a parent now, which I am, now we're late, whether I like it or not, and I tell you, I bring my kids to preschool so they can be minded, so I can do my thing, and I don't care what you do. All I want is a free childminder, and sure, they're not going to remember anyway. What would you say to me?
Well, I suppose
I can't believe I said that.
Well, and that and actually that does happen, so that is the reality. So the first thing we have to do is just face that reality. But there are ways to connect. There are ways to reach those parents. And actually, all parents are just trying to do the best for their child at that moment in time. So that might be the best at that moment in time, and we have to accept that at that moment. But there are small things you can do in terms, well, certainly, obviously, and I work for as you know, a communication software, where we're trying to bridge that gap between what's happening in the early childhood education setting and then what goes home. The activities are noted down and shared with the parent on a kind of a routine basis. The documentation of their learning now is being shared with their parents. So it gives a focus for conversation at home. Like the parent just wants to know, like the child probably will in all eventuality come home and say, yeah, what did you do today? Nothing. But actually, if you're able to see, oh, well, I see you were painting with Katrina, or, I see you were out in the garden today playing on the moving toys or whatever, or you were involved in small world play or whatever you were doing. It's a conversation opener for parents, because I think actually parents will just say, well, I don't really know what to ask, actually. And so I think opening up that channel of communication is just key. And kind of bridging the gap and not having the early childhood education setting over here as a silo and the parents siloed over here. You have to break that fourth wall. You can't. Early childhood educators are very busy. They don't have a lot of time, particularly on drop off and pick up, to be able to have those in-depth conversations. We have to do better, actually. And maybe like not just our software, but there are lots of softwares out there now that are sharing what happens in early childhood with the parents when the child comes home.
So it's not just having that in place, it's also how we use it then at home.
Absolutely, yeah. So it enables the conversations to happen that probably wouldn't ordinarily. So even in the car on the way home, if the child is verbal and able to speak, they probably will have got activities during the day that they were working on through to the app on their phone. So having that information and going, oh, I see you were doing, and actually with the early childhood educators naming it and linking it to the curricular framework, suddenly there's a whole raft of information that the parent may not have known, and then actually can feel like they can ask informed questions then, or go back to the setting with questions if they have questions. So I think it actually has a knock-on effect. It's not, as you say, just providing the information. It's actually for other things to happen.
And why is it important in the long term to have those conversations with our children? Why should I invest time in having that conversation?
In talking?
Yeah.
Gosh, where would I start?
Just being a challenging parent.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a language perspective, the kind of one of the single most important things I always say that we can do with a very young child is talk to them, actually give them rich experiences on which they can base language later on. It helps them develop their vocabulary. It helps them communicate if languages, if they're non-communicating, but they're able to communicate in other ways. It actually preempts other communicating forms later on. It allows them to express themselves as well, and because actually being able to express themselves and developing their language also goes into other parts of their lives, like their social and emotional well-being. Can I tell if something happens to me? Am I able to express that? So that's really important as well. And being literate is obviously a huge skill that children need. And we know that particularly early language development and high quality interactions predict children's reading at age 9. So
wow,
So there's a lot riding on those interactions, and sometimes it actually doesn't have to be earth-shatteringly brilliant interaction. It just has to be an interaction, something even during a daily care routine where I'm just changing your nappy. This is what I'm doing. I'm just describing what I'm doing, and we're having a lovely time, and I'm talking to you, and I'm making eye contact with you, and I'm teaching you all of the things that you need socially to engage with people in the future. You're joining our cultural club, if you like, and I'm teaching them that. So I think that's really important.
When you say narrating and eye contact, and then straight away my brain thinks off screens on how they steal that opportunity. And then all the delays and lack, we're just limiting their potential because they haven't developed that. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think
especially screens in preschool settings as well.
Yeah, and screens, unfortunately digital technology is with us. We can't ignore that fact. It's everywhere, right? As adults as well, we have to take responsibility for 100%. Our interaction, what we're modelling. Are we able to put our phone down when we come home from work? I have to struggle really really, I actually have to say to myself, and I have 2 phones, one for work and one for personal use, so I have to put them out of my sight so that that's not the first thing my children see when they see me in the evening, is me looking at my phone. They'll be saying to themselves, she's been looking at it all day, But what I would say about it is what's really important and how it can be useful actually is you can use digital technology with your child in a way that develops interactions actually. So like you can sit with your child and do something with your child. I think when it becomes, not the word dangerous is probably a bit serious, but I think it becomes a bit more challenging to their development is when you just leave them to it. And there's no interaction, and they're just fully interacting with a piece of software but if you sit with your child and play a game together, suddenly there's interaction happening, even if it's a sidelong glance.
But it's like a toy. It's that medium between you and the child.
Completely.
Yeah.
And it's something that allows conversation and interaction to actually happen. But I do worry about children being on devices for long periods of time, and the effect that actually has on their reward systems as well. Like a lot of the games that are created for young children have instant rewards and instant gratification, and that is quite damaging down the line, I think, because that leaks into the rest of their lives as well. So they think that everything is instant gratified, and they have reward instantly for things they do. So again, that affects the resilience they have, I think, in kind of having patience to persevere and the dispositions they need actually to get on in life and learn later as well. Like they need perseverance, they need patience, they need to be curious about the world, and the instant gratification sometimes the technology does on its own, it's not doing an amazing job of developing those.
Keeping our brain very lazy. You kind of answered my next question with what you just said, but knowing what you know about children's development, where would be a good place to put my focus on to support them as much as I can in that early stage of their development?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing I think is that we play with children, with children. Like, I don't mean that, because also they obviously need to play independently, and they need to play on their own, and they need to have free play. But I think we actually need to have, I heard a phrase recently about play courage. And I think we actually have to have a little play courage as adults. Actually, as we grow, sometimes we lose the ability to be able to just play, actually. And I used to find this when I was training the primary teachers in my previous job in higher ed. I used to do a big session on play, and I used to give out boxes of different resources, and I'd say to the students who were 18, 19, and I'd say, okay, off you go now and play. And they would literally be looking at me with panic in their eyes, going, what do you mean? Like, what do you want us to do? And I said, there's no agenda here. Just and then I used to have to take them through, okay, take all the resources out, I want you to go back to your 4-year-old self now.
The courage.
Yeah. And kind of, I think we develop inhibitions around play as adults. And actually, the research tells us that the one sustaining thing that keeps play going with children is actually adults playing with them. So engaging with children in play and playing alongside them or playing with them, and not hounding them, like not intervening when it's not appropriate. We have to kind of maybe take a beat and take a look and see, is this the right time to kind of approach a play situation? Do they want me here? And if they don't want you here, then you take the cue and you move away. But actually not being self-conscious about it, because children really want to play with us, actually. And I think there's so much learning that can happen, so much interaction, so much language development, going back to language, so much problem solving that can happen. It's an all-rounder, and it's how they learn best, as you know, Maria. So that's the single most important thing you can do, actually, is not be afraid to play with your child. Get down on the floor and play with your child. Another thing I think is, and it's a bit controversial, but it's providing what's known in the research literature as professional love and care. So actually providing that, as educators in particular, I mean, parents will do it, but as educators in early childhood, not to be afraid of the care aspect of the job. Because actually in safe spaces, in trusted environments, that's where children will flourish. If their well-being is not attended to, actually everything else will suffer. And they can't really learn in an untrustworthy situation. So I would say to educators as well, not to be afraid of those golden moments of connection with children, real connection, particularly the under 3s, not to be afraid of that. Like, And the babies have, thank goodness, the babies have come to light now much more in the revised curricular framework that was launched in 2024. Babies are having their moment in the sun, which I'm absolutely delighted about. Before, there was this differentiation with babies and toddlers were over here and young children were over here, and everything was kind of geared toward the young children. But now the under threes have parity in terms of the approaches to learning, the documentation of that learning and everything. So not to be afraid of professional love and care, I think, is really important. And then the other thing is listening. So listening, but not just with our ears, with our eyes as well, actually. Our whole body actually has to listen to, and listening means attending to the nuanced social cues that babies and toddlers and young children are giving us. Really tuning in and asking yourself then, by looking at this child and observing this child really closely and listening to what's going on, is this the right moment to intervene with that child? What's my intention behind my interaction? So slowing down and taking a beat before I interact with the child and working out what my intention is. And is the intention right for that child? Yeah. I think it's really important.
That brings a lot of reassurance that we don't need to have all the answers.
No.
If we observe on a tune,
the child will tell you.
Exactly.
The child will tell you by their behaviour and also what's brilliant most recently as well is that we've moved towards what's called a rights-based approach to early childhood now, a model of participation where babies, toddlers and young children are actually seen, it's a bit of a mouthful, but as agentic global citizens with rights. So that kind of blows the minds of educators because they think, how in the name of God am I going to attend to a child or a baby of, a year old or under a year and their rights that they have? But what I was saying before about slowing down, observing and tuning in to what the child actually really wants to do at that moment, that's actually allowing them to exercise their rights. As they get older and they're able to verbalise what they want, they're going to tell you, if it's not a good time to have snack or it's not, and even with a baby, they will give you cues. This is not a good time. And as an educator, you have to say to yourself, does it really matter at this moment if that baby doesn't have this snack at this particular time?
But the level of self-awareness that's creating is massive. And how many of us are in therapy because of the lack of self-awareness? Because we had to do everything at the given time. Why?
Yeah, why?
To give sense of control to the teachers.
All this being said, early childhood education in Ireland, educators are incredibly time poor. They have no time. They're laden down with administration, they're laden down with paperwork, they're laden down with they have to do everything. So it's, on the one hand, theoretically for me to say, listen, you need to slow down. But what I would say to educators,
not too much.
Is just slow down once in the day with the child that you're a key person for. Just once. And then you'll find the reward you get from that slowing down once. Suddenly you're like, oh my God, I got so much out of that. And suddenly you're doing it twice in the day with the child that you're attending to. And suddenly you're doing it three, and suddenly it creeps into your practice. Yeah. It can't change overnight because that's not really how typically and traditionally early childhood or primary education or indeed secondary, that's not the way we were trained. I was trained as a primary teacher, so that's not how we were trained originally. But now I'm afraid that's it. The UN Convention for Children for the Rights of the Child has been there since 1989, and only now are we really attending to it in early childhood. I'm delighted.
Yes.
I'm delighted.
It's just we're in such a strong period of transition.
Yeah.
And it's changing, and changing is overwhelming and it's scary, but it just have to embrace it and do the best we can with what we have now. And that's all we can do.
Context for setting is so important. I say this to educators all the time. What is right for your context in your setting will not be right for the setting down the road. So, it could be that you're in an urban area. It could be that you have an outdoor environment. It could be that you've no outdoor environment. It could be that you actually are an outdoor setting. So everything happens in the outdoors. But what's right for your setting in relation to particularly the new framework will not be right for the setting down the road. So it's one of the things actually that has also come to the fore this year, which is great, is that we have agentic global citizens for the children, but we also have agentic educators. And educators are now getting the permission on a policy basis to actually make decisions that are right for the children that are in front of them each day. So, as I said, one size will not fit all, and you have to have the gumption and the confidence, and that's a work in progress, I'm sure, to be able to make the decisions that are right for you. So, if it is, I can't, or if you're a leader, I can't get the staff to do that in my setting. Maybe you could do it once, maybe and model that, or you could get one particular staff member who's really good at it to do it once and then creeps in. by osmosis, you know.
Yeah, it's really empowering. And as you said, you have your goal, you know what you want, break it down into small steps and just take one step and forget about the rest, and then they'll come.
It follows, you know, and changing practice in education takes a long time. You know, it doesn't happen overnight. Education is a slow moving engine, and changing perceptions of educators and changing practice takes a very long time. And there are so many complex other issues associated with the sector that have to be factored in as well. It's not straightforward, but it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think it's important for parents in a very simple way? They know about the curriculum.
Yeah, so it's been actually there since 2009. So, and that was a really huge step forward, both politically and from a policy perspective, to put that in place. We were a little bit behind, but at the time it was brilliant. And so it was rolled out at that point, and it basically covers, it's what's called a curriculum framework. So it gives settings, educators, and now parents actually as well, which I'll speak about in a second. It gives them a framework on which to base their planning, basically, so they can create their own curriculum based on this framework and kind of guidance for what they should be doing at various different stages with different children. It's broken down into 4 themes, which is great. So you have well-being, exploring and thinking, communicating, and identity and belonging. And those 4 themes then each have aims associated with them, and then the aims have individual goals associated with them. So the settings will be very au fait with it. There is a parent version of it, most recently for the most recent update. So that was there since 2009, and it was quite lengthy actually, but quite a decent framework and was working quite well. So in 2022, in my previous job, our team was approached to do a big literature review. So we were asked to look at all the research literature on the 4 themes basically and see what's happened in the last 10 years in the research about children's learning. What do we know now that we didn't know when the first Aistear was created? And so I was responsible for the communicating side of it. So with my colleague Ger French, and we looked at all of kind of what works now, what would be changed in the new framework were to be reviewed. So all of those research projects were done, looked at all the research, and that was then fed into the NCCA, who are responsible for creating the curriculum for all the areas of education, and they revised it and they launched it in 2024. So it's leaner, okay, it's shorter, it has fewer learning goals, it has the same number of aims, and it has the same number of themes. So those 4 themes are still there, but the learning goals have reduced. They're a bit more condensed. And
they're probably less specific, so it gives more flexibility maybe?
It does give more flexibility, but there are some huge concepts, and I've actually alluded to them in like our previous discussion. So there's things like the rights-based approach, there's the importance of psychological and social well-being, there's things like children having the power to make decisions, power to kind of influence the learning that happens. You know, if for example, you're playing a particular piece of music to a group of children, and 90% of them are their backs to you. They don't like that piece of music. So what would you do with that information? You'd say, well, the next time I'm going to play music, I'm not going to play that. And they've actually had influence on your next steps. Also, what's come through really strongly now for educators is that they have to reflect, and critical cycles of reflection. So based and embedded deeply into their practice. So it's called noticing, nurturing, responding and reflecting. And so they notice what the child is doing, they nurture and name what the child is doing in terms of an observation. They respond, they think about how they will respond and plan for next steps, and then they reflect as a setting on is there anything that they need to do to change.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's a cycle, and it feeds back in then to their planning. So, and it's kind of collaboration with peers as well. It's no longer sort of individual collaboration, and that's a bit scary, I think, for educators.
It is scary, but I see that how attitude can, if you have the right attitude towards that, you can see that as a growth opportunity for yourself as an individual as well, not just how you help the children, but also as a human being to implement that in your own life and use it for your own self as you bring it inwards and outwards for other people. I think it's massive. That's brilliant.
Like, I think it
takes time and work.
It takes a lot of work. And again, it's new and they're time poor. But again, what I've been saying in the CPD that we've been doing on Aistear, I've been saying to educators, again, what I said about slow relational pedagogy and slowing down, do it once. Build in 10 minutes. Surely there is 10 minutes in the week where you can sit as a group and go, how did that go? What did you think of that? Or, there's 5 minutes, where you can say, I've just been observing Gillian, and I've noticed this. You work with her a little bit. Am I crazy here? So that there's that collaboration around. Or I was thinking, the books that we have now, I'm not sure they're inclusive as they should be. What do you think? So that collaboration, that collaborative reflection, oh my God, it's just so powerful. And it's also evaluating their own practice and improving and striving for more. Last thing just to say is, well, there's lots of other things as well. There's connections to family and the community much more, which is brilliant. The importance of transitions. So transitions from school to the setting, from home to the preschool, from room to room, from activity to activity, from you name it, right? So transitions is actually there as a principle in and of itself. Before it was just kind of mentioned throughout the 2009, but now it's actually front and centre. Yeah, because it has a profound effect on how children react later on in their social and emotional development. It's crucial how we navigate them through that. So it's great to see that. And then Irish is there. So there's Irish words.
I'm learning Irish in Duolingo.
Are you? Oh, brilliant! Yeah. So have a look at the framework, because there's Irish dotted through it now.
Okay, brilliant.
And that again, that gave educators kittens, because I don't speak Irish, but actually it's not about that. It's just showing an appreciation for the heritage of the language, and that the odd word is translated, or that if there's somebody in the setting who can engage with children through the medium of Irish, then that's brilliant. You don't have to be an Irish speaker or a Gaeilgeoir to initiate early childhood education under the framework. It's just giving it a nod. And if you can, it's brilliant. So,
and it's back to that partnership as well. How do we learn together? You don't need to have all the answers. I don't need to know the whole language. Well, let's investigate. Let's research how to say that in Irish, or how do you say? If we have other cultures in the classroom, can we say that in different languages? Or play. How do we say play in different languages? Yeah. Supporting languages in the classroom, including Irish as well. That's inclusion.
Oh, inclusion
and belonging.
Under identity and belonging, the uniqueness of the child is central. So every child is unique, recognising difference actually as well as similarity. So we're not all a homogenous bunch of people. We don't have a homogenous bunch of children in front of us. We have children with various cultural backgrounds. We have a plurilingual environment now as well, with lots of different languages. And children are coming to the setting with a unique what we call funds of knowledge. So knowledge that they have from their own background, that is so important. The experiences they bring, the cultural knowledge they have, and that's to be celebrated. And that's kind of why the Irish is there as well. It's a sort of a sense of an appreciation of heritage and culture. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. As language is business, all these things either growing or dying. So we have to, Yeah, I love that. What are the ways to improve? Because obviously it's important that we're all on the same page, as you said. It's not educators over here, children over here, parents over here. What are the things we can do from parents and from educators to improve that connection? And obviously you do a lot of that through child paths. But what are the small things we can do? Even parents feeling more comfortable asking questions if there is something they don't know. Why did they do that? Or they coming covered in paint. They're covered in paint. Why? And then the confidence from the educator to say, look, that's what it meant. My son came with handprints, blue handprints all over his uniform. And I was like, I love that style because I understand the fun and the connection and the, identity and all of these things that went through that. I'll put them in the washing machine. It's going to go out. It's fine.
It washes out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if not, then look, you keep it. I don't care. Yeah. But I understand but is there a way to improve that communication so we can all be on the same page?
So one of the things that I've just been involved in doing, we developed in Child Paths a thing called the learning record. So this is based on the new framework, right? So it's how the educator documents a learning episode of a child, okay? So it's after an observation. And one of the moments in that, there's a space there where well, first of all, it all goes home, right? So it's shared with the parents, and they can go through it all and have a look. And the various different aspects of noticing, nurturing, responding and reflecting. And one of the reflecting bits is there anything that the parent can do at home to extend the learning or to mirror what we're going to do? So there's that communication bit. So then the parent can kind of go, oh, actually, the parent, it's shared with the parent. The parent doesn't have to write anything back or doesn't have to take it on board. But I would say even more than that, actually, what comes first is getting to know the children. That's number one. If you know your children and you really know their background, you know about their life. You're giving them the space and time to be able to talk to you and tell you about the experiences that they're having. By default, you're actually getting to know the family as well, but you have to get to know the families as well. It's about relationship building. It's probably not enough just to communicate. It's actually about building a really meaningful and authentic relationship and actually impressing upon parents that, we are actually partners in this child's education. We need to find dual goals. So a goal that we can actually agree on, that we, in terms of developing the child that's in both of our care here. And then I would say giving parents opportunities to share their experiences with their child. The example I always use is educators like to collect emergent interests of children, and it's used then to inform kind of planning what happens in the setting next, So I always give the example of my own son. Eventually, after, when he was in daycare in the UK, eventually after a while, he had a fantastic key person there. She came to me and said, "See, we're doing a lot on dinosaurs. He keeps talking about dinosaurs." And I was like, "Oh, no. He's terrified of dinosaurs." Now, he's not anymore. And then he became an expert on dinosaurs, as they mostly do, don't they? Like they at a particular age. But early on, he was terrified. And he was talking about it. But the educator misunderstood that as an emergent interest, as something that he was interested in.
More dinosaurs.
Yeah, more dinosaurs. And I'll tell you what, let's make a huge paper mache dinosaur. And like I'd say, Henry was absolutely terrified of this. And I said, "Oh, no, he's talking about it because he's afraid of it."
Wow.
So actually, only that she'd had that conversation with me, like he was very, very little, like he was 18 months or something,
Why
even
are they
younger.
doing that?
Why are they torturing me with dinosaurs everywhere? But that connection and her patience and her interest in me actually, and getting behind what was happening in the setting. In the event, it was by chance over a conversation, but you actually do need to talk to parents. You do need to find out what's happening from their side of things in relation to something that you're observing in the setting, and build that trust and relationship. That's where it all comes from.
What's the way an educator can get information back from the parents? How can they do that? Is it just like picking up or dropping off little moments? Conversations?
You have to. Well, obviously, the technology allows us to do that. There's obviously, we're all WhatsApping now each other and voice noting each other, but obviously our software is a secure space for them to do that.
And it goes both ways.
It goes both ways. Yeah, so they can communicate. And there's parent messaging that the setting can send out directly, and the parent can message the setting as well. So there's that safe, secure spot that they can do that in confidence. So that allows parents on the go to be. But I think settings all need to open their doors actually a little bit more. It's tricky because it's a secure environment and it has to be. But I've been to pick up my niece recently who's little, and I won't say where she goes and I won't say who she goes with. But quite rightly, it has to be in one door closed, and it's all very clinical and has to be that way from a secure perspective. But actually at some point in the journey along the way, we're going to have to open up the settings and let parents come in, actually, and not be afraid of them seeing what's going on, and then having a conversation with them and explaining, as you were saying earlier on, using the professional language about what they're doing, what you're doing, explaining, letting them in, letting them enjoy.
It's an investment in that connection, and then
huge
benefits the child ultimately. Yeah.
You cannot keep them at arm's length. Like, you can't keep parents at arm's length. You have to let them in, and it's finding the time and finding the space. In some countries it's very successful. They do it after hours. Shock horror. But unfortunately, like, parents are working, their child is in there for a reason, and you have to kind of be a bit malleable and a bit flexible. Flexibility is key with parents. As I said at the very, very beginning of this, parents are trying to do their best, and whatever their best is at that moment, it may not mirror what the setting thinks is the best, but you have to be flexible enough as a setting to go, okay, actually, that's their best. I'm going to work with that. And we're going to try and include parents. And then just including parents in decision making. Why can't they be involved in decision making with the planning and the learning that's happening? Inviting them, their input to the direction of travel in terms of emergent interests. What's your child into at the moment? Like, we're relying on children who are verbal to tell us that, but what about the babies? What about the toddlers who are not verbal yet, or children who can't communicate in that way? How do we get that information about what the children want?
And I think if you request in an optional way that information from the parents, it gives them the opportunity to want to know more.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I don't know. And then that creates, how do I learn that?
How do I learn more?
And then they'll be more connected to their children because they have like a homework. You'd have a purpose or a goal where I can get this information so I can provide it to the teachers and feed into that cycle of communication.
And also information, like, so providing parents with opportunities, formal opportunities to get information. Like a lot of parents are not early childhood education specialists, they're but they're a specialist on their child. But we do need to give time and space to parents and invite parents in and inform parents, and give them the reasons why educators are doing certain things, why we're working on, this particular aspect of exploring and thinking, or, why we're focusing on, being kind to each other at the moment, or, why we're looking at Diwali, or why, because there are children in the, and bringing them into that and having informal opportunities to discuss and being visible. Like it's difficult for educators. A lot of drop-offs and pickups happen in a staggered way, so educators aren't always visible, but the leadership has to be visible, I think. Personally speaking, the leadership should be visible to parents like all the time.
Yeah.
And not so that if a parent needs to have a conversation, the leader, it mightn't be convenient at that time. But
it's just making a little effort. Because,
flexibility.
Yeah. My children's school, the principal during COVID, he was outside welcoming every single child, knew every child's name. Amazing. In a big enough school, welcome every single child, saying hello and the name of the child. Every child all throughout COVID. He was outside, whatever the weather. Yeah. That was just incredible. And that's a non-negotiable for him.
Children remember that because the principal has taken time to say hello to that child.
It's priorities. It's priorities. I'm sure he had tons of work to do.
Of course.
But that was a priority to welcome every child, because then the whole day goes much better because these kids feel welcome. So straight away, the behaviour is already more cooperative with everybody.
No, that's really admirable. Yeah. And it speaks to the dedication he has to the children, and actually their families, because that has a knock-on effect.
And parents talk about that as well.
Yeah,
he's there with the
in the snow.
So it's incredible. Emerging interests. Why is it important? If you could design your ideal setting, would you always work with emerging interests, or would you have a bit of a mix, or what is emerging interests?
So emerging interests are things that arise they're basically, it makes the learning meaningful for children because it's connected to what they know and what they're experiencing, right? So we would lean more towards collecting emergent interests and basing planning and learning for teaching and learning on emergent interests. It's not always possible. Also, there will be some kind of prescribed interests that the children need to know about, need to learn about. But, for example, Troy Parrott got the 5 goals in the soccer. Okay, so he got 3 goals a hat-trick in one game and 2 in the other. I would guarantee the young children who are verbal in preschools were talking about that the next day. Right, so you might decide, okay, how can we use this? This is an interest that the children are talking about. They're motivated. It's intrinsically motivating for them to learn based around a topic. What can we teach them? We can teach them about teamwork. We can teach them about the game soccer. We can teach them about the countries that he played in. We can teach them about, life skills, about where he came from, and soccer as a game, or ball handling skills or whatever. But it has huge meaning and authenticity to those children because it's coming from them. So we're starting where the child is at, and we're using that as a motivator to develop content. As I said, it's not always possible that every single emergent interest can be used. I think educators, and they're collecting them all the time, either anecdotally or in the documentation that they're doing when they're observing children. And so they may circle back at another time to an emergent interest, which is fine, because it may not be appropriate. But it is important. It's very important to each individual child that they feel they had ownership at some point over the learning. So I was talking about that, and now we're learning about that. How powerful is that for a young child to realise that they are actually having influence over the direction of travel?
I feel seen, I feel heard, yeah.
I feel seen, I feel heard. You have listened to me, and I am shaping. I have power in this situation, where they don't always have power because of their age, and there's a power imbalance. But also there are occasions where it has to be a mix. Like it can't.
Even just acknowledge that you've heard them and and you'll try. Maybe we'll learn about this another time. Thank you so much for sharing. Instead of being like, be quiet, listen to me.
Yeah.
I'm talking more about
unless it's dinosaurs.
Maybe, but yeah.
It's dinosaurs. But like that is incredibly powerful to a child to feel, oh my gosh, I actually have worth here. My views have value. Thank you, and they may not be able to express that to you in verbal terms, but it does have a profound effect on how they feel they belong in a place, and feeling like they belong is intrinsically motivating for them as well in terms of their learning. So I think a kind of a balance of the two is probably good.
Yeah, so powerful. Literacy, you said reading, age 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
So what's the role of literacy in early years?
Well, it's emergent literacy. So
tell us, what is literacy?
So literacy is the ability to, like in pure terms, the ability to read and write. But I would put the ability to express yourself in language as well into the mix there. I don't think you can actually segregate oral language out of it. In early childhood, we're talking about emergent practices, so emergent literacy. So you have things like knowing one end of a book from the other, knowing that you hold a book a particular way and we read from left to right. So concepts of print. Knowing that there is words on a page and illustrations can tell us what's happening in the book. All of those concepts are early emergent literacy skills. And obviously then, as they grow and develop, we move into things like phonological skills and being able to actually decode words and read words. Emergent literacy also would take in things like early mark making, so the scribbles that they do on the page, and painting. All of the marks that they literally put down on page have meaning and value. That's really powerful actually for in terms of interpreting that for them, what they've actually tried to express on the page.
Or on their trousers.
Or on their trousers, or on their trousers. Yeah. Or on the walls. On the walls, oh God. But it is early, but I suppose when they have opportunities to...
It reduces the autonomy to do that.
Yes, yeah. So if they're given opportunities to early mark make in the right environment, they will do it. And then obviously the role that oral language has. So all of that early talk, all of that early interaction, that doesn't necessarily always have to be eye contact, but showing that you're listening, modelling active listening for them, modelling listening, modelling the backwards and forwards of communication. All of those skills feed into then their eventual literacy later on. Does that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And without that, what is the impact? What's the impact without that pre-writing, pre-reading through play? Also, what is the impact when we try to push them too hard in the early years to be reading and writing?
Like, there's mixed feelings about that, and certainly the research is quite mixed about that. So we are doing, and what the right thing to do is to do the age appropriate thing, and the age appropriate thing is the emergent skills. So I think sometimes there's a misnomer around early childhood education that just because they're not sitting at a table writing, by the age of 4, that nothing has gone on. No learning has happened, and they're not going to be literate now if they can't write by the time they're 4 leaving preschool. But actually all those mark making, grip, fine motor skills that they need to write later, if all of those things aren't in place, then they can't do the things later on when they get to, primary school and beyond. So we're sort of laying the foundation there. It's the same with numeracy. We're laying the early skills down. We're laying the foundations in early childhood so that when it comes in an age-appropriate way to the point where they do need to articulate their thoughts or learn to read or actually decode words, that they're in a good space, both phonologically in terms of listening to the rhythm of language. They're tuning in to particular words, they vocabulary, they recognise then vocabulary and sight words when they go to read. All of those skills happen at an earlier point when we're reading to them, for example. And I always go back to a really a study that I read and had a profound impact on me about why children want the same story read to them all the time. And the reason that they want that read to them when they're very little repeatedly is because they're rehearsing the language. So the familiarity of the language, they're actually rehearsing that as you read to them, and we wouldn't necessarily, we just go, oh God, as a parent, we just go, well, not this again.
Or the same song.
Yeah, or the same song. Yeah. But the reason they're doing that is because they're rehearsing that language. So that's really, it's a really important thing to do, is to read to your child and show them that that language on the page translates, language that's out there translates onto the page and vice versa. And yeah, I think I don't know whether there's still a pressure now, actually. I think a lot of people understand that play-based learning is actually the way forward, and developing those emergent skills has to happen before they can engage in, formal literacy practices.
Still, I think it's important to get the message out there.
Yeah.
Because my friend last year, when we got the books, not last year, the last year where we still had to buy the books for school, and she said, oh, my friend's school is much better than ours because they have more books.
No.
And I was like, no, that's not how it works.
No, definitely. And early childhood and primary needs, don't even get me started on that. Like, Aistear actually, and actually that's one of the sadder things actually with the revised framework.
No,
the Aistear framework used to be up to the end of senior infants in primary school.
Oh, yes.
And now it stops at junior infants since last year. And so there isn't a mandate for primary schools now to use the play-based framework, although play has come in.
The whole curriculum now is play-based.
It's play-based now. Ideally. The jury's out on that one.
But it wasn't compulsory before either. It was the school choosing to implement that.
Yeah.
And then they use golden time to play, and that covers the whole.
Or Aistear time.
I think it's a whole new episode on this.
Yeah, we need a separate episode, Maria, for that. I think talk about that. But no, it's that's kind of sad. But hopefully, because it's mandated in the revised curricular framework for primary education now, right up the school, which is blowing the minds of primary teachers, because I think there's in sixth class, how would we do that? Where would we start? But it's a playful approach.
It's the scientific method. It's like what do you want to learn?
Exploring,
how do we research that? Making mistakes and learning from that, and restructuring brain structures and so powerful.
I'm not sure did I answer the question?
Probably. Numeracy, literacy, and numeracy as well. It's just seeing the value. I think when they go to primary school and they're doing this homework on maths or whatever, and they don't understand, and it's like they have to memorize all these things where they could actually understand the connections between numbers and value and
quantity.
And when you see a number 10 and you see a number 5, you straight away see that number 10 is twice the size as number 5. And then you see a number 2 there because it doubles, and you understand. You don't just memorize that or feel frustrated because you can't remember that and you don't understand it. It's play that brings that. Yeah,
and like with numeracy, I would have taught some courses on early numeracy when I was teaching the primary in primary education. Early numeracy and numeracy skills are built upon this. It's a very staged approach in terms of.
You get lost.
Well, if you miss one of those stages, that's when trouble can actually arise, and suddenly we can't play catch up anymore. And the only real solution really is to go back to the foundational level again and start. And also, I would say the use of concrete materials for mathematics and early numeracy is just essential. So when we're teaching the beginnings of addition, so that we're actually using manipulatives and we're using resources to actually show that the relationship between this amount of counters and that amount of counters gives us, a total amount of counters, and everything is very hands-on, and they're physically experiencing the mathematical concept from the very, very beginning. But even going back a step further, like even in early childhood settings, in preschool settings, the activities of early maths like sorting and matching and all of those activities are very, very important. I remember when I was doing my master's, I remember she was a professor of early numeracy, and I remember her saying to me she said one day in one of our seminars, children of 4 can divide. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, give a child
Sharing.
of 4, give a child 4 sweets and tell them to share them out equally between themselves and their brother. I said, well, actually, in the case of my
3 for
in the case of my children, not. But like, I was, oh my God, of course they can, So, but they do it, and the point she was making at that time was, of course, the point that manipulatives and actually physical resources to teach mathematics are just crucial.
And that's an inclusive way to do it as well, because not everyone learns by memorising and listening and understanding. No. It's such an abstract thing.
It's so abstract, and quantity is so abstract.
Yeah.
What quantity is, and even counting, like even the fact that, what that principle of 1-to-1 counting, that one thing represents one number. Also, the other counting principles like the stable order principle, where 3 is always before 4, 4 is always before 5, 5 never moves, 5 is after 4. That's that's difficult for children as well. Like there's numerous counting principles that they have to acquire. And that's only through actually physically experiencing the counting principles and seeing them in action, counting themselves, counting things to them. Yeah. So
yeah, and I suppose the importance of CPD for educators as well. And
in fairness, the maths curriculum is very much advocating for a multi-strategy approach in primary school, so that children are getting many different strategies and there isn't just one way to learn in maths. I think that was also maybe when I was in primary school, you learn this way and that's it. Whereas actually, no, there are other ways that we can come at mathematical problems and solve them. It doesn't have to be the same way.
And embrace it. And again, back to the partnership with the children, learn together. Is there anything else you want our listeners to take away from today's conversation?
I think one thing that for particularly parents, because I think I wish I'd taken this advice, and I tried to take this advice, although it doesn't always work myself, is stop racing, stop running. There's no rush with your child. You know, the single most caring thing you can actually give your child is your time. That's all they want. And that goes back to the play thing. You know, getting down on the floor for 10 minutes with your toddler, or playing a board game with your 9-year-old, or but in early childhood, just stopping for a second and going, okay, I'm just going to slow everything down right now and actually just tune into my child and what's right for them. I think there's so much information for parents now. We can get it from everywhere. You know, we're bombarded with information, but actually having a bit of a critical head on your shoulders with regard to that information as well, and saying, how does that work for my child? How does that work for my family? Is that evidence-based actually? Is there anything behind, you know, what that's post I read on Facebook? Where did that post on Facebook come from? Or that article in The Guardian, or that article in The Independent? You know, actually thinking about the background to the information that you're receiving and having a bit of criticality about the decisions you're making, and trusting yourself then as a result. You know, having confidence in the decision that you make for your child, and stop comparing yourself to other parents and other children. I was
going to say that, you know, whether it's an article that gives you information or a picture that you see from a perfect family in a perfect home.
It doesn't exist.
No.
It doesn't exist.
It's what they want you to think.
It's the Instagrammable life. Like it just doesn't. It just doesn't exist.
The reassurance and confidence. I'm doing the best with what I have.
Yeah.
But how can I make it better tomorrow?
Yeah, what can I learn? Like, what can I do? What can I do for my child, specifically for my child? And then lastly, just to say, early childhood is a really sensitive period of development. Like, we cannot ignore the vast amounts of learning. Like, children go from having something like 500 words on average at the age of about 18, 19 months to having 10,000 when they enter school. So, like,
I'm not learning that fast in
Duolingo, yeah.
4 words.
But never is there more of a steep trajectory of learning. You know, there in our lives, there isn't. Like, we can go back and learn later on in life, but we will never have such a steep learning curve. So those years from birth to 6, that is when the majority of those neural pathways are laid down. And it's
93% of everything we do comes from our subconscious mind.
Which is very scary.
It's a lot, isn't it? Yeah. And these are all the things we do, and we say, oh, I'm not going to do that because they're not going to remember. What's the point of that? They're not going to remember. Or you teach them things like, I told you 100,000 times. Like, it's all wiring their mind.
It's there.
It's not in the conscious mind, so they're not going to tell you they know these but it's there. It's massive. Yeah.
And it's not always physically visible, you know, but that's why it's really important about that slowing down thing, you know, and getting behind the action that the child is engaged in, and getting behind the learning, I suppose, and accessing what's happening, as you said, at a subconscious level.
Thank you so much, Gillian.
A pleasure.
We'll have you back.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't forget to like, share and follow so you'll never miss out on upcoming episodes. See you next time!